Well, hi there. I brought Buttercup with me for this nerdy extravaganza today. She's a good snake. She's crazy. So I think I've had her about as long or longer than any other reptile I have currently. And I got her not too long after I moved to Utah. And I grew up in Colorado where we have bull snakes, which are other pituophis snakes. And they're grumpy.
Yep.
The bull snakes, even ones I raised up from like a little baby, they'd still hiss and rattle and puff up all big. And my friend Kevin, he knew how much I loved pituophis, and he caught Buttercup somewhere, and she was like 4 feet long, and he's like, "I've got a 4-foot gopher snake for you," and I'm like, "Oh no, that snake is gonna be a nightmare to deal with." And she has been just the sweetest snake ever since I've had her. Honestly, the hardest thing with her was just getting her to eat consistently. But lately, she's been a monster of an eater. I think for the first time ever, she's in the mood to breed. Ever since I've had her, she's wanting to breed, and her behavior's been a little different. And I've actually had to get her out of her tub using a snake hook to let her know that it's not feeding time, because she is just ready to go. She's been eating a lot lately, so much like last week, I'll probably get pooped on by a snake before this is over. And though Buttercup is the sweetest snake ever, if she bit me right now, wouldn't shock me too much. I think she's just going through some little hormonal changes, because I think breeding might be in her dreams. So anyway, that is lovely Buttercup. But we gotta stop talking about reptiles for a second so we can just talk about some general nerdiness.
General nerdiness.
And I'm here with Leisha also. She's helping me out today. Today she did her hair, so maybe I'll just make her stand in for me. and I also should mention, if I seem a little bit nervous today, I am a little bit nervous today because one of you asked me to do a freestyle rap, and so I think at the end of this, I will do my best at a freestyle rap. I should mention, I'm not a freestyle rapper, and I feel like if you wrote it out in advance, that's cheating because it's freestyle rap. So anyway, stay tuned for that. That should be something.
All right, here's some general nerdiness. And you did get a super chat already, by the way.
No big deal.
So we'll go back to that.
Okay. Super chat already?
General nerdiness. This one, Overlord Chungus. Oh, these are from the community tab.
Oh, yeah. So we did a community tab post the other day, and I just, we grabbed a few questions off of there. There were so many good ones. Hopefully we get to a lot of them.
Yeah. This one says, I feel like Clint has strong opinions on Star Trek. I get those vibes.
I'm funny because, well, I like Star Trek a lot. I also like Star Wars, and for some reason people talk to you as though those two things are mutually exclusive. You can either like Star Trek or Star Wars. I like them both a lot. My favorite series is, and I should say I haven't really watched all of the series very much. The ones that I've seen the most, I've seen a lot of original series. I've seen a lot of Next Generation. I've seen a lot of Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And as a kid, Deep Space Nine was my favorite. A while back, though, on Netflix, for the first time ever, I watched all of the Next Generation. I actually started at season 2 because season 1 was like unwatchable for me. And I started at season 2, and then I watched the whole thing, and it was amazing. I'd never watched them sequentially before. Like, I would just catch them on TV here and there because my parents aren't as nerdy as I am, and they didn't watch any Star Trek. So I mostly got to watch it with my friend Andrew growing up, and whenever I'd catch it on TV. And so this was my first time watching it through sequentially, and it was fantastic. And when it got done, I was like, oh, I gotta go back and start at season 1. So I watched season 1, which actually the last episode of Next Generation ties in really well with the first episode. It comes full circle, no big deal. I loved it. And then when I was done with that, I was like, well, I need more Star Trek in my life. And I went to watch Deep Space Nine, which was my favorite as a kid. And I really liked it, but it didn't hold up to the Next Generation for me. So right now, original series is always a lot of fun, but I think Next Generation probably my favorite Star Trek series that I've watched. Voyager was always my least favorite.
There was one error in that comment.
Was there?
Yeah, you said your parents are not as nerdy as you are. Your parents are different nerdy.
Okay, my parents are way different nerdy than I
Your
am.
parents are extremely nerdy.
Okay, Alicia says my parents are extremely nerdy, though I think you would be hard-pressed to find very many nerdy things that my parents are into.
Yeah, they're different nerdy.
Different nerdy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to those super chats really quick.
Super chats!
XX Rocket Rumble XX says, "Hey Clint, thanks for entertaining us from lockdown."
You betcha. Thank you guys for being here with me. It's really been a boost for me as well. I love getting to chat with you guys.
And Megan Kistler did a super chat. And she says, "I didn't know you were in Utah. I'm in Tooele."
No big deal. In Thule?
You know you're from Utah. You can pronounce that right. Let's see. Let's go back to more. Let's see. Another super chat, real quick. Joseph Holslander says, "If you had the choice of reptile to choose from with $1,000, which one would you choose, and what are your reasons?"
Oh, so do I have to spend the $1,000 on the reptile or on the reptile and the enclosure and all that stuff?
It doesn't specify.
Oh boy. Well, there are like with everything when people are like, "What's your favorite animal?" I'm like, "Give me a category." Like I don't know how to compare them. So, turtle. If I had $1,000 for a turtle, I'd probably go alligator snapping turtle or mata mata. Maybe fly river turtle. I don't really know what they go for because I've never even thought I could come close to buying one. Snake. I love that cow retic that I held at Nerd. I also, and I don't know if you can get one for $1,000. I don't know. And I'd be very tempted on an indigo snake. And lizards. Oh boy. I did love
Dwarf
me.
caiman.
Well, that's not a lizard.
That's true.
A dwarf caiman would be my crocodilian of choice. Possibly we could do a video on one sometime. And then let's see. As far as lizards go, I did really quite fall in love with that captive bred green tree monitor. That would be an amazing route. How's that? That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Great. Paul Charpet just did a super chat. No comment.
No comment. Thank you, Paul.
And then Mark. Let's see, Mark. Yes, he's wondering about fan mails. Do you want to talk about why we can't open fan mail?
Oh well, we can open fan mail. It's at our PO box. And so Jason will get it, and right now we're not really in contact with Jason. We're sort of in contact with no one. But as soon as things ease up a little bit, we will do a big fan mail opening.
Okay.
Please send lots, because that would be jolly good fun.
Let's do a couple more nerdy questions.
Yeah, we need lots. This is Nerd Theme Day. This is Nerd Day.
Okay. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good one. Do you like Harry Potter? If so, what house are you?
Oh. Okay, so somebody asked me a question like, what book am I reading right now? I'm like, I don't read that many books, largely because I don't have enough time to sit down with them. I do listen to a lot of audiobooks, especially when we go on road trips, which we haven't been doing lately, because they're great, and I can read audiobooks while I'm doing other things, and I love them. So as a kid, like growing up, I didn't read Harry Potter. I was first introduced to Harry Potter by my friend Anne Marie, who was like, "You've got to see these movies," and the movies I can do. So I saw the second Harry Potter movie, and it was awesome. It was unbelievably awesome. And so then I went back and watched the first one, and I think if I'd have seen that one first, I wouldn't have watched any more of them. But I've seen all of the Harry Potter movies except for one. One of them came out while I was in Peru, and well, actually, I think a couple of them came out while I was in Peru. And I didn't know which ones I'd missed. And so like I came home and I'm reading the synopses of all of the movies, and it's all the same. It's like another year has started at Hogwarts, and Harry, Hermione, and Ron noticed some strange activity going on as Voldemort raised his ugly head again. They were all the same, so I don't know which one I missed to this day. But recently, Leisha and I started reading the books, and we read the first one, which was the movie I didn't like that much, and it was fantastic. So I see myself getting more into Harry Potter in the future. I really enjoyed it. As for what house I am, Slytherin seems obvious, but you know that's not true. So I'm probably a Hufflepuff.
You probably are.
I'm a Hufflepuff.
Your favorite, let's see, favorite shiny Pokemon.
My favorite. Oh, and do I have any shiny Pokemon?
Have you ever found it?
Okay, so I have been playing Pokemon Go. I played Pokemon Go in 2016, and then I went on like a 2.5-year hiatus, and then my son recently, he's 6, and we've been playing quite a bit, which has been really fun, especially during this quarantine time. Like we're still allowed to leave our houses like to get exercise and stuff, so we go on a little walk to the closest gym, and but I'm not like I think I'm level 32, which no big deal. That's kind of a big deal. I think I only have like 2 shiny Pokemon. I've got a shiny Aron. He's got red eyes instead of he's got blue eyes instead of red eyes, or red eyes instead of blue eyes. I don't know, the opposite of normal. And then I've got this flying scorpion guy with webbed. I think it starts with a G. I don't know what he's called. Anyway, flying scorpion guy with webbing stuff. He's a different color. But I don't have that many. They're all pretty neat though.
Some super chats.
Super chats!
A bunch are coming in. So Paul Charbet says, can you please talk about Quince monitors?
Quince monitors?
Quince and peach throat monitors.
Yeah. In fact, we'll do a video on them pretty soon. There's some really neat kind of, I mean, in a lot of ways they're going to be sort of like a pretty good size Timor monitor. And they can be really neat. They can be really neat. There's a lot. Monitors are an awesome group, and some of them are easier to interact with than others, and some of them are easier to care for than others. That's the problem with Savannah monitors, is getting their care right is actually way more challenging than people think. But lots of them are neat, and so if you're willing to put in the research and the space and the money that a monitor takes, and interaction isn't that important to you, then there's lots of great options, and those are on that list.
Awesome. XX Rocket Rumble XX says, what can I DIY build for a tortoise or chameleon?
Ooh, I'm actually going to be DIY building, and I've DIY built my big enclosure that I have for Big Daddy, and I'm going to upgrade him in the near future. So our current enclosure that we have him in is 8 feet by 4 feet, which is all right, but now that we have more space for him at the reptile room, we're going to build something much bigger. The nice thing about tortoises, so there's it depends on what kind of tortoise, but generally you can, tortoises don't need like a lid. And so you can build, and they're not great climbers. And so you can build just something that's basically a floor and a perimeter that holds a bunch of substrate, and you can have lights going across the top of that. And it's a great tortoise enclosure. Containing a tortoise is a very different job than containing a snake. Now, on giant tortoises, like our sulcata, the one problem you can run into is they're very, very powerful, and they might burst right through the side of your enclosure. So coming over the top, not a problem. Burst right through the side like the Kool-Aid man, that comes up sometimes.
Eternal Knight did a super chat with a nerdy question.
No big deal, Eternal Nerd!
Do you play any tabletop RPGs, or have you ever? If yes, what was your character? If no, why not? And what would you want to play?
Okay, so...
You're nerdy enough to know what RPGs is. Role-playing games?
Yeah.
I'm nerdy enough to know what RPGs is.
Leisha's nerd level has elevated so much since we met. So much. So much. So I will tell you a secret that is going to be, this is an unpopular fact about me. I've played role-playing games in the past, and they're a lot of fun. I'm very, very nerdy. For some reason, I've always drawn the line at Dungeons and Dragons. I have so many friends that are way into Dungeons and Dragons, and I actually think it probably would be really great. But I'm like, that's my line for some reason. I don't know. So I haven't ever played that. This is not an RPG so much as a strategy game, and it's way nerdier than Dungeons and Dragons. But in high school, because I've always been awesome, I was way into like medieval stuff. And so I played, I actually have never once played, but I bought a good chunk of an army for Warhammer Fantasy, the whatever the one is that are actually like normal humans. And I spent a lot of money on that, and I spent a lot of time painting, and then I never actually got around to playing, but I had fun pretending like someday I was going to play. That's as close as I've come. But I have lots of friends, including Will and Michelle especially, that work on these a lot. They love Dungeons and Dragons, and Will has moved on to the next level, which is just hardcore LARPing. See, and that's my fear is like, I know it's a slippery slope, right? I don't know.
Maybe
Because I would,
D&D is a gateway.
yeah, and the thing is, I would like LARPing, and then suddenly this channel vanishes. You know, all of my goals in life disappear. So you know, it's the same line that I drew for myself about World of Warcraft. It's like that was consuming people's lives. Like they didn't do anything else anymore. I have a friend who would play World of Warcraft for 72 straight hours. Then he'd sleep for 48 hours and he'd wake up and play for 72 hours again. My most cynical friend was his roommate and was thinking that he might die, and he was genuinely concerned about him, and he wasn't concerned about anybody. Anyway, I have a line just because the rest of my life might disappear.
For the record, I've wanted to play D&D.
Oh yeah, Alicia, like I said, her level. So I've always been here, right? And Leisha was like way down here, and now she's like there. She's like, get me in.
I'm not. Okay, so Tanner, the Dolphins guy from last week,
Tanner,
says,
go Dolphins!
Hey Clint, how was your week? This time and he left a super chat. This time I'm coming with a question on some more lizards with not much on them out there. So what are your thoughts on green amoebas and plumed basilisks?
Plumed basilisks. So green amoebas, stinking rad. Okay. I don't know where our common names come from, because all of the monitor lizards, all of the varanid lizards, they are all considered monitors, but not all of the teid lizards are considered tegus, and the amoebas and the whiptails, they are just little tegus. That's all they are. Now, I will say a green amoeba, it's not as flighty as most whiptails, but it's a lot flightier than, say, an Argentine tegu, because when you're a little lizard, the world is a scarier place than when you're a big burly lizard. It's like, you know, you better not mess with me because I'll mess you up. And so they just kind of plod along, king of the road. Whereas, you know, an amoeba is from a more dangerous world. They're gonna be flightier and more afraid of you than our tegus. They're actually kind of like a slightly smaller Colombian tegu in a lot of ways, but they're awesome and they can be really good. Plume basilisks. My biggest concern with basilisks just seems to be that, you know, I don't think we get a lot of them that are captive bred, and they don't seem to do that well. Like, I've never covered basilisks. I'd like to, but I can't find anybody who's got a healthy adult basilisk. And, you know, and you see them and they're like $25. When you see an adult lizard that's awesome and $25, that's not a good sign.
We have a bunch of super chats to catch up on.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you guys, so do your super chat button.
I hope they're nerdy. Super chat, super chat, super chat, super chat.
There you go. Everett Kimball says, hey Clint, I've heard you talk about the board game Frog Night on Kickstarter. What are some of your favorite board games?
Oh, gracious. Okay, so Frog Night, obviously awesome. That's on our King Cobra video if you want the link to get your own Lilith as well. No big deal. But that was awesome. And yeah, we love games. So we love a game called Love Letter. That's one we really enjoy. We love a game called Don't Mess with Cthulhu. Yeah, Code Names is one we play often. Pandemic we were playing for a while. Right now, too close to home. We can't go back to Pandemic. Lately with the kids, we've been playing, what is that? Sleeping Queens, which has been a ton of fun. We played Bang. That was actually one of the first games that kind of we were all playing together. That and Love Letter came later. Forbidden Island is a great one. We don't actually own it, but I love it. It's it's a cooperative game. I like cooperative games because then you don't have to end up enraged with anybody. That's a good list. Okay, moving on. Ding, 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 ding.
That's right. Elizabeth Basali says, have you participated in any of the recent bio blitzes on iNaturalist? Do you have any tips on contributing to these?
Oh, I don't. I probably should. I have been so busy with crazy things lately, so I need to look into that more because thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Megan Kistler says, opinions on Firefly? Please tell me you're a fan. Space Pirate.
Okay.
For the win.
Okay. I'm like, on Fireflies? Because that's different.
Yeah.
Fireflies, awesome. It's so awesome. I even like Serenity a lot. They're just, it's so good. Yeah, that is all. Space Westerns, the best.
Melissa Hunt says, Clint, I love your channel and happily support you on Patreon. Question.
Thank
How
you.
can I encourage my beardie to come to me when I put my hand out / call in? Have a treat in your hand?
Yeah, if there's food involved, that beardie will be there. And just I don't know that that's a major concern with almost all lizards. If you just come up and put your hand under their chin, they just crawl up on you. That's what they do. And and even like my morning geckos and stuff. I've been handling my morning geckos lately. I wouldn't recommend that with most morning geckos. My morning geckos are super used to me, and they're super laid back. Like they'll start coming out of the jar, and I have to like touch them on the nose to get them to go back down inside. They're just not afraid of me. So I've been handling them. So you just put your hand underneath, and up they hop. In fact, we've got a new video coming out in the near future with morning geckos in it because I love them.
Amar Suhail says, Helly from Ireland. Have you ever studied anything that you thought would be niche / useless, and it turned out to be really useful / became mainstream? Coming from a guy who wrote a paper on coronavirus and its zootonic properties.
Statistics.
Wait,
zoonotic, yeah. Statistics. When I took that class in my undergraduate, I thought it was just another pointless math class that I needed to pass, and I did. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. Well, in graduate school, I learned that statistics probably more important than my biology background for being a scientist, in biology even. And so, I've taken a ton of statistics classes, and I wish my foundation in statistics, because I'm good at math when I understand the math, and my graduate level statistics classes have mostly just taught me how to use statistical softwares. So I can use R, and I can use JUMP, and I can use SPSS. But I don't necessarily understand the statistical tests as well as I would like to, because I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have, or at least making real effort to retain what I learned in my statistics class.
Okay, so this is a good one from Colopsia. What is your favorite mythical creature?
Oh, dear. I would go with dragons, because obviously, though I wouldn't really want to come across one, unless it was really small and liked me.
Let's jump over to Patreon for a sec.
We have patrons. Patreon.
Tyler Tripp says, do you have any good breeders or shops that you can get reptiles from? Obviously Animal Ark, which I'm planning to go to as soon as quarantine is done. But you talk of difficult animals to find. Any suggestions on where to find them?
It depends on the animal, but Great Basin Serpentarium is a great place to go. Nerd, New England Reptile Distributors, is a great place to go. Bertopia Geckos, if you love crested geckos.
Gecko Daddy.
Gecko Daddy, if you want the most amazing looking leopard geckos you've ever seen in your life, go to Gecko Daddy. Don's Garters, if you want garter snakes. Kyle Wilson, if you want a false water cobra. It just depends on what you're looking for. Also, Gecko Daddy, they've recently bred waxy monkey tree frogs, which I get the idea almost nobody has produced, and they've got buckets of them.
Yeah, we want to do a video with them after
Yep.
quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be exciting. JK says, what are some quality evidence-based sources for information on proper reptile husbandry? There's so much contradictory information out there that it is rather difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yes, it is. I mean, there are lots of good sources and crummy sources online. One of the things I think that is probably the best thing to do in a lot of ways is to find groups on social media that specialize in that animal. And you'll quickly realize kind of who the people are who seem to know what they're really talking about. And then ask questions about where they go, where they get their information. And when you get sort of a consensus from everybody, but that is a good source for this animal, do it. Because there's nobody out there who is really going to be a great source for every animal. I mean, there's a reason we don't do like really, really detailed full care guides. It's because I'm not qualified to do that on every animal we talk about. There are a few that I've kept in, large numbers, and I have years of experience, and I feel like I could make the kind of care guide that would really be decent. But for the most part, like, I'm not your source. No one person is your source on all animals. And so finding what the whole community that centers around that particular animal, where they turn, that's probably a good place to start.
And somebody says Reptiles.
Oh yeah, Reptiles is awesome. and Mariah and Chad are good friends of ours, and yeah, they're terrific.
Awesome. Stephanie Resor, also on Patreon, as a kindergarten teacher, I appreciate this one. She says her fifth graders are huge fans of yours. They've incorporated your videos into lots of their classes. Even now that school is out there in Canada, she says, I know they'd like to ask what you think the best pet reptile for a kid might be. We've had the discussion in class, but they'd love your thoughts.
With any pet reptile for a kid, I'm going to make the assumption that the parents are going to have a major supervisory role. We have a list of top 5 reptiles for kids, and depending on who you are, any of those can be great. So corn snakes are really great. Probably the biggest concern I would have with a corn snake is just that kids might not be good with lids, and then gone. Blue tongues are amazing. They're just amazing, and it's hard to say that that's not spectacular, but they're expensive. And I mean, there are lots of great options that are relatively easy to maintain, but won't do as well with handling. There's just trade-offs, and so there's no one reptile that's great for every kid. It's going to depend on the kid. It's going to depend on the parents. It's going to depend on if they're okay with various types of feeders. There's just a lot that goes into it.
Let's pop back over to Super Chat. We've got some
Super Chats? Are they nerdy? Because we need more nerd questions. Bring on the nerds.
You're crazy. Let's see. Elowen Bloodbane says, hey, Clint, love your videos. I have a question. I have a juvenile Chinese water dragon, but he is very flighty. Any suggestions for handling? Oh,
don't force it. Don't restrain him. Build a relationship with him. Where good things happen when you're around. The food is presented. I wouldn't hand feed. I would feed with tongs because you don't want him to think your hands are food. But that's where I'd start and just build that relationship slowly. If he's young, which he probably is, world's a scary place when you're a young Chinese water dragon. And also, as he's probably an import, you just don't want to stress him. Give him every chance he can have to survive.
Amy Sheet says, hey, Clint, where can I find resources for all the different state laws for owning Western hognose snakes? I know my own laws, but not other states.
Yeah, that's a pain in the neck. You pretty much have to go to their individual websites and look them up. But yeah, it's...
Put that together, Amy Sheets.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sue Stain just left a super chat. Mandy Reiner left a super chat. Adam Lord said, if you could go back in time to research one extinct species of your choice safely, which one would you choose?
I like what you said there. T-Rex. There's so much mystery around T-Rex, which is arguably the coolest animal that's ever lived. And
I'm surprised you didn't say Carnotaurus.
I know it, but I honestly have more questions about T-Rex. And a lot of the answers about T-Rex probably apply to Carnotaurus as well, because they're both kind of big, burly, carnivorous reptiles with tiny little arms and a big head. I'm not sure how well this plan was thought out. And so T-Rex, T-Rex right now, we got a lot spreading around about how they're not very fast and what they might use those arms for, and that they might have just been scavengers. I don't buy it in the sense that they're just hoping to stumble upon some dead sauropod, though I'm sure they would take advantage of that opportunity if it presented itself. I think they were the bears of the dinosaur world, of the late Cretaceous. That was the bear. And you might notice bears are not built for catching food quite as well as, say, a pack of dogs or a cat or something, with that sort of leaping and athletic ability in that way. And so bears can surprise something, and they are deceptively fast. But most prey species could run away from a bear. Not you, but most prey species. But that's not what bears do. Bears are fighters. If you're a cheetah, you're really great at catching fast prey. You're not very good at retaining fast prey because some big fighter is going to come by and run you off. And bears are brawlers. Bears are super brawlers. Of course, not from cheetahs necessarily, but if something does get a kill, bears have a really great sense of smell, like T-Rex. They're going to smell, somebody got something. I'm going to go over there and take that from them. I have a feeling that's what T-Rex was doing, but I'd like to know, and since I can do it safely.
Merlin, who I recognize is also a patron on Patreon, she said, "Hi Clint, you seem like the kind of nerd that enjoys Magic the Gathering. Is that true, or did I completely misjudge you?"
I think I could enjoy Magic the Gathering. And my good friend Kevin really likes Magic the Gathering. All my life, I've ended up playing some Magic the Gathering. When I was younger, I played a lot of Pokemon cards, which is still Wizards of the Coast, right? And I would play Magic from time to time with my friends. It's just golly, just one of these card game habits will suck down all your money that you have as a kid. Lately, because my kids have been way into Pokemon, I busted out all my old Pokemon cards because I've still got them. I have a first edition Charizard. Kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal.
In mint condition.
Yeah, it's in mint condition. First edition Venusaur too, and a good chunk of that. And I've got all these jungle cards with no jungle symbol on them.
You're finally being appreciated, Clint. People are saying, "Clint, you are so cool."
See? I told you.
Mandy Reiner, by chance, would you be willing to or plan on doing a video on dragon snakes? And then she left the scientific name.
Yes.
Do you know the scientific name?
Not off the top of my head, but
Xenodermis jeffacus. Did I do it right?
Sure. Well, I will tell you, dragon snakes. I mean, that would be amazing to cover. It would make for a great video. The difficulty, as is the case with a lot of things, is going to be finding somebody who's got a healthy individual that's feeding, that's going to handle the stress of being filmed. Probably if we found one, I would probably just go to where they are and bring some lights and try to film some B-roll of it and not have it in our studio. They seem a little fragile. And it could be one of those things that, a few years from now, we'll really have their care figured out and we'll be captive breeding them and they'll be fantastic. But right now, it's tough to keep them alive. And if you're doing it right, you'll never see it. So.
Let's see. Richard Mark Nichols says, "What's your favorite animal?"
Leisha.
I asked you this the other day, and you're like, "You gotta break this.
You gotta break it down into categories." So I will give me a category, and I'll tell you my favorite within that category. Make it not a reptile.
A mammal.
My favorite mammal. That's still too big of a category. I'll tell you the mammal I would most like to own. Under the right circumstances, would be a captive bred captive bred opossum. They seem like a very reasonable mammal, but that's by no means the coolest mammal on earth. But it would be fantastic as an educational animal because marsupials are neat, and talking about the metatherians and their placentas, that choriovitiline placenta instead of the chorioallantoic placenta, and the limitations that it presents and why marsupials are outcompeted by the eutherian mammals everywhere. It just opens up so many doors. There are questions people ask in the presence of a marsupial that they do not ask normally, and that would be neat.
That's a neat conversation. Sue Stein says, "I'm getting a snake this summer. What snake do you think I should get?"
Well, we've got lots of videos to help you figure that out. If it's your first snake, honestly, thing number one, there are some snakes that are really difficult. Thing number two, find a snake that just melts your heart. And that you're going to love and be excited about, and then learn what you need to learn about it. Some are easier than others, and so like corn snakes are really a great option. If ease of care and personality are the most important things to you, but if they don't get you excited, there's a lot of things that are just as cool.
Heidi left a super chat. This is a nerdy one, so I'm
boy
down to it. She says, "Love your videos, Clint. Also a fellow Utah myself. Nerdy question. If you could live in a fantasy world," and then she gives some examples: Harry Potter, Pokemon, LOTR, which I'm nerdy enough to get that now. Which would you choose?
Lord of the Rings. Okay, I would not do Lord of the Rings, by the way. That seems like a horrible fantasy world to live in. Unless I was in a hobbit village. But I would have to be a hobbit. I'm not going to fit well in the hobbit houses. Though I did just go to the hobbit houses.
That's true. Yeah.
When we were in New Zealand, I went to Hobbiton, and it was bodacious. So I could be pretty happy on the Shire, I think.
Yeah.
But, let's see, a fantasy world. I'd probably just want to be Dr. Dolittle. Does that count?
Dr. Dolittle. Oh, Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah. That was one of those scenarios when I was a kid that, I saw Dr. Dolittle, and I was so disappointed that I couldn't talk to the animals. It was like, oh man, why can't I do that?
Yeah, it's true. I feel the same way. Kelly Howell says, hi Clint, question about the bell complex and ball phantoms. I have a phantom lesser that I consider a bell, but I found out that a super phantom doesn't make a bell. Is phantom part of the bell complex then?
Yes, it is. It totally makes a bell. It just doesn't make an all-white bell. So leucism, that whole complex. Okay, so there are more in this complex. There are things like honey, mystic, and phantom might be the same thing. They're at least very, very similar. You got crystal, which comes from special. So special. You got Mojave. You've got lesser. You've got Russo. There's a lot of them, and a lot of them, when you pair two of them together, you end up with a white snake with blue eyes. What leucism does, which is different from, say, albinism, which I just covered on Instagram the other day, but albinism only affects the pigment melanin, which is your brown-black pigment, but it leaves like your yellows and your reds. Leucism affects all the pigments, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate them all. That's why like their eyes are blue and not red like an albino, is because there's still some pigment going on in that eye, but not very much. But on the all white Lucies, it's taken out all the pigments on their body. On the mutation that is like Mystic and Phantom takes out considerably less. The mutation that is special, you know, when it's a homozygote, you get an almost all white snake, but quite a bit of orange as well, because it's not taking out all the yellows and reds, but it's reducing the amount of them. And so hopefully that makes that make a little bit of sense. But it's totally part of the complex. It's on that same gene. It impacts the colors, but not as dramatically as, say, lesser or Russo, which can just eliminate them.
Awesome. I'm going to jump back over to Patreon for a second.
Patreon.
Michael Vasinelcellos. How old do dubia roaches have to be to breed? What would be your ideal dubia roach starter setup? Okay, so dubia roaches are awesome. The nice thing about dubia roaches is being an insect, they molt, and they will molt into an adult. The adult forms on most insects have wings, and the adult male dubias have wings, which how quickly they get to that stage is largely going to depend on how warm you're keeping them and how much you're feeding them per capita. So per roach you have how much food they're getting. If they're able to eat ad libitum, which is just as much as they want, they're going to grow a lot faster than if they're having to, budget their energy a little bit more. They'll probably live longer if they're not eating all that they can, but they won't get to breeding size as quickly. But you'll be able to tell when they're adults because the males will have wings and the females will be considerably darker in color, and they'll have they'll be like big wing buds. They won't be quite full on wings, but the adults are very, very distinctive. Was there another part to that? Yeah, what would be your ideal dubia roach setup?
Starter setup. Get a bin, a big plastic bin that has very slippery sides. They're not very good at climbing up plastic, which is one of the things that I like most about dubias specifically. But make sure it's a real slippery bin, and then put a bunch of egg crates in there. I keep mine near a heat lamp, but which is for a reptile. But if not, put a heat mat on the bottom. They won't reproduce if they're not warm enough. So put a heat mat on the bottom and feed them. They'll be happy as clams. And in fact, Kevin McCurley from Nerd, he recently did a pretty great demonstration of how to set up a roach bin for dubias.
Sage Young on the live stream just said, hey Clint, why is the king cobra not in the cobra family?
Oh, because that is a great question, by the way. So the king cobra it's actually, as I understand it, more closely related to mambas than it is to the genus Naja. The main similarity that it has to the other cobras is that it does the hooding, but I mean, so does a false water cobra. They're I think some members of the genus Rhabdophora, which they're Asian snakes. They actually really look like cobras as well, and so it looks like a cobra, and it's close relative to the cobras. I understand that the mambas even at one time were included in the genus Naja, so they were also considered cobras. And as a result, I mean, you've got a monophyletic group for the genus Naja, which means they all share a common ancestor, and it's all the descendants of that. And that's what we call cobras. you could expand that group to include a more distant common ancestor and all of its descendants. And then, king cobras you could classify them as cobras, but you'd also have to include mambas and probably some other things as well.
Sean Bagel says, Clint, from just the live stream, I was wondering if a bioactive enclosure is beneficial and better for a crested gecko because I don't want to purchase or keep isopod or springtails unless it is beneficial for a gecko.
Oh, I would say it's more beneficial for you probably, just because it's going to cut down on the amount of maintenance you have to do in that enclosure, and the enclosure can be a lot prettier, and it's just more naturalistic, and so the gecko might be happier, but it's likely to thrive either way as long as you're keeping up on your care.
Sherry LBW on Patreon says, if you could have any venomous snake in the world, not taking safety into consideration, what would it be and why?
I like this. Not taking safety into consideration. So I'm assuming there's one of two possibilities here. One of them is I'm somehow protected from the snake and so is everybody around me. Or B, I'm just an idiot. So, okay. So I can have any venomous snake. I've always loved gaboon vipers. They're unbelievable. Taking safety into consideration, if it's going to be like a serious, like a viper or an elapid, I'd probably go eyelash viper because they're beautiful, and they were honestly, as a runner-up, even not taking safety into consideration.
Let's go back to our super chats. Let's see, there's some good ones in here.
We need more nerd questions, though. Keep nerding.
Okay, the Eagle says, "Hi, Clint. Not a nerdy question.
Oh dear.
Do you know much about GEHYRA Marganita?
Okay, I've
otherwise known as the Halamara giant gecko.
Oh, Halamara, yeah. The poor man's lychee. They're really neat. I mean, they're not going to be as handleable and stuff as a lychee, and I think they can be grumpier. So if you're happy with a gecko that has an attitude a little bit more like a tokay gecko, like maybe kind of a hybrid lychee tokay gecko, and it's considerably cheaper than a lychee and more expensive than a tokay gecko, that's a good one.
Here's a nerdy question from Elowen Bloodbane. She left a super chat. What's your favorite console for gaming?
Okay, my favorite gaming console. I really like some of these VR gaming systems that have been coming out lately, and I have a really terrible laptop. My laptop is 11 years old, and so I can't run any of them that require a fancy laptop. But what was the name of the company that? Anyway, I know there's a really cool one that just came out not too long ago that has its own built-in processor and everything, so you don't need a fancy laptop, and that appeals to me very much. Someday when I'm all kinds of rich and stuff, I would like to buy something like that. Okay. Okay. Right now, I've been playing Super Nintendo with my kid.
Nazbolian Bolsfarte. Sorry, guys. Love from Florida. Is it more ethical to adopt an animal from a rescue that's wild caught or a captive bred animal from a breeder?
Oh. Well, I mean, as far as ethical goes, when you're adopting an animal from a rescue, you're doing a service to that animal and to the rescue, because rescues have finite resources and that animal needs a home. So like that's always going to be your most ethical thing. The main question here is it an animal you actually want to care for? If it's not, then you're doing a good service, and that's obviously a great thing to do, but that just might not be what's right for you at that time. And in that case, buying a captive bred animal from a breeder is much better than taking something out of the wild.
Lieutenant Dude asked, can we expect any more bird videos discussing more appropriate pet birds, ducks, chickens, pigeons?
Yes. My connection, I don't own any birds myself, and so my connections with other people are limited at the moment, as you might have assumed, but I'm starting to have more people offering birds to me, so we'll have a lot of good options.
Cute. This one's cute. This is Steven Divitt. Hey Clint, just wanted to say you're to blame for my new pet, a little jumping spider. Thanks for the info. Love having her around.
Isn't that such a good one?
Yeah.
I'm so
Super
excited
chat.
for you. Super chat.
Jackson Gill says, I love your videos. You have inspired me to get a crested gecko. Do you think an 18 by 18 by 24 would be good for a single adult? I've read mixed info and I'm unsure.
Yes, I do. I mean, obviously, you can go bigger, and to a point, that will be better. There is a point at which that gecko might have a really hard time finding its food, and you might have a hard time finding that gecko. You know, like if your enclosure is a room in your house for your crested gecko, then it's essentially out. But that's a great enclosure. That's a great enclosure.
Melissa Hunt said she had asked the bearded dragon question from before. She says, I'll rephrase, do beardies have the mental capacity to learn to come to their names like Tegu Monitor despite their lesser intelligence?
Oh, they're real smart. They're much smarter than you'd think. They can learn. So this was an awesome study I learned about a while back. They took bearded dragons and they trained them to push down a lever in order to get a little treat. And so they'd push this lever down, they'd get a treat. They also took other bearded dragons and they didn't train them to push down that lever, and they never ever figured out how to push down that lever to get a treat. But they took bearded dragons that hadn't been trained and hadn't ever been around the lever, and they let them watch the bearded dragons that pushed down the lever and got a treat, and they put them in there, and they right away pushed down the lever and got a treat. So not only can they be trained to do things, but they can learn behaviors by observing other individuals, which is madness. They're smart.
Awesome. Back to Patreon for a second. Let's see. Kurt Kellner said, what breed of small tortoise is the easiest to keep indoors?
Oh, well, Russian tortoises and their relatives. Though giving them a big space is still a good idea. Tortoises, if you keep a tortoise in a small space, all you're going to hear all day long is boom, 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 boom,
Just
boom.
scratching in between.
Yeah. Bang, bang. And that's all they're going to do because they want to get out and explore. So even a small tortoise, give it a big space.
Yeah. Sorry. This is Patreon. You made a video about abalone.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a video about Algaria or other types of alligator lizards?
Yes, I do. In fact, I had one lined up a long time ago, and then it just didn't work out. But I want to cover your like Arizona alligator lizards. Alligator lizards are an awesome group. So yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Do we have more nerd stuff?
Yeah, we can go to some nerd stuff. Let's see. What degrees do you have? What are your dream pets? And what was your favorite video you made on this channel? That was from Nevada 2.
Okay, so I had a double major undergraduate in zoology and biological science. I double majored because I only had to take developmental biology instead of an elective, and all of a sudden it was a double major. So I did that. And then I have a master's degree in biology. My research was on evolutionary ecology. And I have a PhD in biology. My research was in teaching biology. So I had a large, it was still a biology degree, but it had a large teaching focus as well. And then what was the next thing?
Let's see, dream pets and your favorite video you made on this channel, which I'm interested to know.
Dream pets. I love me. Crocodilians are unreasonable dreams. And then
your favorite
my favorite video. That's a hard one because I love a lot of these videos a lot. Honestly, the ones that if I had like the power to make one of our videos really successful, it would be our genetics series. We worked really, really hard on those, and like they work. I use them in my classes that I teach. I think people have this idea that genetics is boring and hard, and it does take a little bit of commitment. You got to sit down with it and figure it out, but it's so cool. And reptile keeping and especially reptile breeding becomes a completely different world once you have a foundational understanding of genetics. And so I do love them still to this day.
Laura Roman says, hey Clint, would you ever talk about piebald reptiles?
Yes, I would.
Yes, I would. Let's see, here's a nerdy question from Patrick Nyhan. DC or Marvel, and what's your favorite Star Wars episode?
Oh boy. Okay, so when it comes to t-shirts, I prefer DC. DC has better T-shirts. You know, you got Batman, you got Superman, the Flash. I always like the Flash, Green Lantern. I had all of these. Leisha wants me to get rid of them. I still got them.
I want to make a quilt out of
She
them.
wants to make me a superhero quilt.
Sitting
Apparently,
in the garage.
they're just sitting there. But I will tell you, with the exception, of course, of The Dark Knight and Wonder Woman was really good, and there are probably some others that I haven't seen because it's hard to keep up on your superhero movies. Marvel makes better movies. And so yeah, and you know, and I love me some Disney, except for here's my big shout out of the day. There's an awesome product called VidAngel. It's a company that takes movies and allows you to edit out content that you don't want to see or hear. You know, but it's not like they sell you bootleg copies of the movies. You have to stream them off of a service that you've got already, like Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu, that kind of stuff. And then, but they'll let you decide, you know, I want this word taken out, or I want this violent scene taken out, or, you know, that sort of thing. And Disney like bans them from doing anything Disney owns. And for no apparent reason, just because they're jerk faces. I love me some Disney. I used to work for Disney. We try to go to Disneyland every year. Love Disney. They're being jerk faces to VidAngel.
That's right.
Could boycott them. Go watch DC movies.
Here's another nerdy question for you, Clint. Timothy J says, is it possible for invasive species to become less harmful and more naturalized as the native fauna adapts to them? How long does the process take?
Yes, it is possible. In fact, it's normal. But it's also very probable that a lot of native fauna could go extinct or change dramatically as a result. So introductions of species into new environments happens naturally in geologic timescale all the time. Colonization events happen and organisms move in there, and they can, you know, it can be very, very disruptive to an ecosystem. And that ecosystem could change, and some of the species there can go extinct. Something called competitive exclusion can happen, which is where, you know, this species comes in and it uses up a resource that something else there uses. And so the individuals of that population that was already there that are using that resource, they die off. But there are a few oddballs in that population that use something else, and they manage to carry on. And so this existing population that was already there, they become very different from what they used to be. There are lots of things that can happen. It's going to take many, many, many generations. And then you will probably arrive at a new stable state in that ecosystem. The main thing is that stable state will not be what that ecosystem used to be. And like I said, this is a very natural process. But humans have accelerated it very much, and we've contributed. And so in some ways, we could introduce things into environments and be like, hey, you know, we're part of nature too. This is just part of the course of things, and we'll see how it all plays out. Or we can say, I don't think it's right for us to be the reason that this ecosystem is changing, and we can try to undo what we've done. And, you know, there's arguments to be made for both of those. I'm probably more on the side of try not to mess it all up, but, you know, it will happen. Life finds a way.
I'm nerdy enough to get that too. What are you doing to me? JC says you, and people are saying must go faster. But JC says you worked at Disney?
I did. I worked in Disney's Animal Kingdom in the Pangani Forest.
Awesome. Let's get caught up on some super chats.
Super chats!
Fire
Super chat. Speed round.
Tanner says, hey Clint, back with another question. What is your favorite Agama lizard? To clarify, I mean proper Agama lizards, redhead, butterfly, clown, etc. P.S. Miami has a dolphin, the greatest football team.
I love the giant butterfly Agama. They're amazing.
Alex Haley says, what kind of care do
Malagasy
snakes need?
I don't know about real specific stuff just off the top of my head, so I would be happy to make a video on it in the future, though.
Awesome. Mondo Gecko Ruthig says, green tree python or emerald boa pet video coming?
I would like that.
Colopsia says, have you ever gone fossil hunting?
Yes. But I'd like to go more. There's a place near here that's really awesome, and I want to go. They have trilobites and
Yeah,
whatnot.
you got a really cool fish one.
Yeah, I did.
Let's see. As a biologist, what are your thoughts on telegony? Telegony? Telegony.
Let me see. I reserve the right to Google terms in case I don't recognize them, because I might. No, okay. Telegony?
Tele.
This is not a lightning round here. Here, come back to that one.
Okay. Let's see. We're all caught up with super chat.
No big deal. Can I get another nerd question?
Yes, you.
I've been dangerously under-nerded this whole time.
Let's see. Nerd question. That's a good one.
Okay, telegony is the theory of heredity, holding that offspring can inherit the characteristics of a previous mate or the female parent. That's the child. And whoa. Oh, this is okay. So this would. There's definitely some truth to this, due to epigenetic effects and maternal effects. So, like when I breed beetles in my lab, I can take wild beetles, but I have to breed them for a few generations to before I can run my experiments on them, because I want to take away the effects of their native environment, and not just what they personally have experienced, but also what their parents have experienced and so on. For example, if a female is pregnant and she goes through starvation during that pregnancy, that's going to have some major effects on the way that baby turns out versus if it was a time of great plenty. And so I'll have to do more research into this specific term to make sure that this all falls under that umbrella. But from my quick look at that, yes, I think that's definitely.
Okay, quick fire round. Did you watch Tiger King?
No, and I kind of don't want to. It sounds like a train wreck.
Yeah. Do you hang out with Gus on a regular basis?
Yeah, he's there at the reptile room, and he's, I've been there a lot, and he's always wanting to come out and play.
When would a phylogenetic video come out?
I should just make one. I just need to make one. We're kind of in a filming hiatus at the moment for some reason, but you guys have said you'd like one, and so I would really like to make one. How do I make it so that people would watch it? That's the thing I haven't quite discovered on the science stuff. Is like, I don't want to be clickbaity, but at the same time, people are like, oh, that's going to be boring. And it's not. It's stinking rad. So how do I convey on a thumbnail and a title that it'd be stinking rad without misleading people? Please let me know.
Okay. I think it's just about time to start wrapping up.
Wrapping up? Was that on purpose?
No, it wasn't, but that was a good pun.
Okay, can you give me the full prompt on this wrap?
The full prompt. Did you put it in the nerdy things?
I put it at the very bottom.
The very bottom. Okay. This is from Just a Dude. Could you summarize the history of life on Earth as an on-the-spot freestyle rap? If you do, I'll donate to Patreon.
And what's this person's name?
Just a Dude.
Just a Dude. All right. I am not a freestyle rapper. I am more of a Dr. Seuss level rhymer. Because Dr. Seuss, I love me some Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss, though, arguably the worst poet of all time. Because when half of every rhyme scheme is a word you made up, it's really easy to rhyme things. So Just a Dude wants me to rap about the history of life. I'm putting Buttercup away because my understanding of freestyle rap is that you need your hands available to you. Are you guys ready for this? I asked Leisha when I saw that somebody wanted me to do a freestyle rap that she needed to beatbox. She says she's not gonna do it. So here we go. Freestyle rap about oh my gosh, my mind is so clouded. I feel like what's the rabbit? Something rabbit.
Peter Rabbit?
No.
Little Bunny Foo Foo?
Eminem's character in 8 Mile. Come on, Leash, where you at on this one? You should bid Angel that bad boy. It's actually pretty good. As I recall, it's been a long time. B Rabbit, I think, is his name. And, he gets nervous. Okay, and I am nervous because this is insane.
Don't be nervous. You're good at this.
It's like my first ever freestyle rap, and it's in front of 300 people right now, and thousands more will watch it down the road. Okay. Okay, all right. History of life on Earth. Okay, well, if I've learned anything from 8 Mile, I need to start out by saying, yo, yo. Come on, Leash. This is what I learned from 15 years ago, how you do it. Okay, freestyle rap. There's a guy on YouTube, by the way, who freestyle raps about whatever. He's British, and it's spectacular, and you should watch him. Here goes Clinty. Okay. Well, let's go back to the dawn of life, the first thing that was ever alive. It may have crawled out of a swamp somewhere. It was almost certainly not in the air. It was deep down below, deep in the sea. At least that's what seems most likely. It was probably by a hydrothermal vent, and it was probably the first life that we ever saw be invented. Because there was lots of energy down there, and they did something called chemosynthesis, just to be fair. And that was the source of the first energy that was used by any sort of living being. And this living thing, little by little, changed generation to generation until one day, like spittle, it conglomerated into multiple cells that all work together ever so well. And multiple cells have some advantages, though I'll say to this day, single cell is pretty much the most advantageous. That's my Dr. Seuss rap for those of you counting. He was always making up rhymes on a mountain. And so these creatures with multiple cells, they went in all sorts of directions, at least as far as we can tell. I'll give you some of the ways that they went. We have all sorts of single-celled organisms, like we've got bacteria that are alive today, and another single-celled group, mostly, that are archaea. And the archaea, from in the middle of them, we got a whole other group, which we call the eukarya, which doesn't rhyme at all with anything I've been saying. But these eukarya with mitochondria they're playing, because there we go. Because the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but nobody knows what that means, so I'll tell. The mitochondria, they do cellular respiration, which allows you to take glucose produced by, say, photosynthesis or chemosynthesis in the ocean, and it turns it into ATP, which is the energy that they're going to use for all things. And so these organisms, with all this energy from their mitochondria, much bigger they could be. And so these big old mitochondria sporting guys, they grew up into things that have thighs and all kinds of organisms that we see today. We have plants that are going a completely other way. They came from the algae that were in the water, but they moved on the land, which is a lot hotter, and it's also dry, which is not good for photosynthesis, but it gave them access to a lot more light and less competition with things in the ocean as this. And so, and so let's talk about the progression of plants on the land, because that's something I know, and it's really cool, man. So the thing about plants moving on the land is that there are many things that tie them to the water. So let's talk about those things for just a second. In the water, they've got access to the water, and they don't need to worry about gravity because they've got buoyancy. And so they also can do photosynthesis with their entire bodies. On land, if you're trying to put roots in the ground, well, that's quite naughty because there's no sun under there. So how are you going to move it? The only plants that could move on the land were those that sat in the water and in the light could move it. And so I told you I'd use the Dr. Seuss rhymes from time to time. But little by little, they developed a vascular system and fruits and flowers and cones and all that good stuff. And they moved way on the land, and it was awesome. Now let's talk about the other land animals.
You're still going? I think you're good.
It's the history of life on Earth. I'll just talk about two big old lineages. One of them would be the deuterostomes, and the other would be the protostomes. One of them, well, both of them actually, they've got a complete digestive tract, which means mouth to anus, which is like a tube inside of a tube. You're sort of like a bagel. And there's two ways to make a bagel. You can start at the mouth or start at the
All right, that's a good place to start. People are like doing fire emojis and clapping emojis. People are renaming your channel to Clint's Reptiles. People are like, white guys can't rap, and then Clint's like, hold my snake.
I'll keep practicing. Maybe this will become a thing.
Yeah, keep practicing.
Yeah, that was my first ever. Cut me some slack. Thank you guys for being so supportive. And soon we'll be back.
Quick. We got to do fire round.
Oh, we're
super
back?
Chats. Super fast.
Okay.
Because some super chats came in, and then we gotta actually.
Okay. Thank you guys for sticking with me.
Okay, Paul.
The unsubscribes have never been higher than during that round.
Best month/season to buy a snake hatchling.
Best what?
Month/season to buy a snake hatchling.
Oh, in the spring?
Merlin said this to you. Oh, thank you for the rap. It is glorious.
Thank you. Good word choice.
The beloved tree says 99% of us are not in a position to judge anyone's freestyle rap. I believe in you.
Thank you.
Serena Hartless says, I'll raise you one. This is amazing. And Elizabeth Bolton says, my BTS loved it. Thank you for the mental stimulation.
I feel good about having at least a reptile with ears say they liked it.
Okay, last one. Jack Adams says, hey, thoughts on scaleless silkback beardies?
Oh, they feel really neat. I have leatherback bearded dragons, which I like, and I'm deliberately not breeding them with others just because bearded dragons are kind of rough on each other, and just, they're climbing on rocks and stuff, and it's really easy for them to get damaged. It's they're going to get beat up more than scaleless snakes, and even scaleless snakes are kind of iffy.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, guys.
Hey, thank you guys.
It was fun today.
As always, like and resubscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
And leave some comments on what our next theme should be.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing a theme. I want even more theme comments. But I've had a blast. Thank you guys for being here with me, and we'll see you real soon. Maybe with another rap. Give us a theme.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Can you believe that?